welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, September 28th, and we have a great show for you today. We have got a recording from several weeks ago with Temple Beth Zion's senior rabbi, Rabbi Claudia Kreiman, and it's a great show. She's got an unbelievable story. She's the first woman Chilean to join the rabbinate, and it's pretty remarkable. And so I hope that you will stay tuned. But first, of course, the news. A potential United States government shutdown is just 4 days away. The Senate passed a continuing resolution to keep the government open yesterday and sent it to the House of Representatives. On Tuesday, a New York judge ruled that Donald Trump committed fraud while building his real estate company. Judge Engeron found that Trump and his company deceived banks, insurers, and others by massively overvaluing his assets and exaggerating his net worth. The judge has ordered that Trump's business licenses be rescinded, making it impossible to do business in the state of New York. A receiver will manage the dissolution of the corporate entities, including the commercial tower at 40 Wall Street and the Trump family compound at Seven Springs. President Biden became the first sitting president in history to join a picket line yesterday when he went to Michigan to join the United Auto Workers in making calls for increased wages and benefits. The Massachusetts State House and Senate Conference Committee approved a compromise tax reform package expected to reach the governor's desk later this week. The bill increases the child independent tax credit from $180 to $310 next year, and then to $440 the following year. It also makes reforms to Chapter 62F, the estate tax, the millionaire's tax, and the earned income tax credit. ARPA-H chose Cambridge as one of 3 sites for the new federal agency. Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health is a research funding agency that supports transformative biomedical and health breakthroughs to provide health solutions for cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases. State government is now funding an overdose prevention hotline that was privately funded for years. The hotline will allow people using drugs to be monitored during a phone call and receive emergency medical care if they overdose. Nancy Reed Gore's resignation has created a Brookline School Committee vacancy. The Select Board and remaining school committee members will choose a replacement who will serve until the town election in May 2024. MCAS scores showed a disparity among racial groups in Brookline, with Black and Hispanic students falling into the did not fully meet expectations group. Superintendent Linus Guillory is expected to release a district-wide strategic plan this fall, including details on the district's approach to equity. A car collided with a Green Line trolley at the intersection of Beacon and St. Paul Streets Monday night. The Accord driver and the passenger from the trolley were taken by ambulance to the hospital with minor injuries. The automobile driver received a citation for a red light violation. And so I ask that you make sure you stop at those red lights. And I also ask that you stay tuned so that we can get into this wonderful pre-recorded interview with Rabbi Claudia from TBZ. See you on the flip side. As promised, today we have an amazing guest. We have Rabbi Claudia Kreiman. Rabbi, it's great for you to be on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here with you.
And for those who know and those who don't, Rabbi Claudia, as she is often called, is a rabbi at Temple Beth Zion, TBZ, which is on Beacon Street as you head toward Washington Square. Rabbi, first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey through this world.
Thank you for asking. It's great to be here. And I would say as part of my journey to this world is that if 15 years ago, you would have asked me, maybe 16 years ago, you would have asked me, where is Brookline? I would have said, I have no idea. I never imagined I would be living here, being a rabbi here. I grew up in Santiago, Chile, in South America, lived many years of my life also in Buenos Aires. And eventually at the age of 20, I moved to Israel, where I lived for 10 years. And where I imagined and I thought that I will live in my adult life. Then life works in mysterious ways, and I ended up here in the Boston area, first in Newton, and then here in Brookline. I've been rabbi. I'm beginning my 16-year TBZ now. And I've been here for this long, and it's been wonderful to be part of Brookline. So English is my third language. First is Spanish, second is Hebrew, and then comes English. If anyone would have asked me that I'll be rabbi in Brookline, Massachusetts, in Washington Square, I would have never imagined that as a possibility. So it's a reminder that we take journeys and life takes us to strange places like Brookline.
Well, maybe Brookline's not so strange.
Not anymore, not anymore.
I visited Santiago and BSAS, and I've been to Israel. So I feel like, we've been circling each other for all these years.
Yeah.
So you've been here for quite some time. Tell us a little bit about TBZ, about the character and personality of this congregation in particular.
Yeah. So TBZ, and many of the viewers probably have been here, and some of you never heard of, is the synagogue with the big columns on Beacon Street. So people often ride by us while they take the T on Washington Square. And it is a non-denominational synagogue, which means we are not affiliated to a specific movement of the Jewish community. Some people ask, are you conservative Jewish, Reform Jewish, Orthodox? We're neither. We are just Jewish, and we take a lot of pride of being an unaffiliated synagogue, which means that we attract people from very different walks of life, people that come with different practices and different backgrounds, people that come with much more traditional background in Jewish life, and people that are for the first time seekers in Jewish life. And I think that there's so much I can say at TBZ, and I love this place, and I feel incredibly blessed to be the spiritual leader of this community. If I had to take two things that make TBZ who we are both our focus and our putting at the center of our experience, our spiritual seeking. We're spiritual seekers, and our religious life, and as so spiritual practice, both having a lot of music and joy, and bringing into our practice a lot of what does it mean to bring God's presence in our life. And if you come to services at TBZ, they're usually very, very lively and full of that in it that is about finding our own path to our spiritual life. And together with that, our commitment to social justice and really connecting between our religious views and our commitment to a life that walks a path of a religious life, together with a path of social justice, equity, equality, dignity for all human beings. So we're very, very active in a lot of social justice issues, both here in Brookline, in the Boston area and beyond. But it is very important for us to make that connection, that work doesn't come in disconnect to our spiritual and religious practice.
Now, at the very beginning of COVID, March 2020, when all of a sudden our day-to-day life, our expectations changed dramatically, I reached out to religious leaders because I knew that this was going to be a real challenge. There were some opportunities. Certainly their congregations, the people they knew the best would need help. And that's when I learned about the Brookline Clergy Association, something that I otherwise would have known nothing about. Can you tell us a little bit about the Brookline Clergy Association and your role in that group?
Yeah. So the Brookline Clergy Association is a group of all Brookline, or most of the Brookline faith leaders that we meet monthly. This association has existed for a very long time. If I have been in Brookline now for 16 years, I've been involved since then, and it existed much before that. I can't tell you the full history and when it started, but I've been involved since I joined TBZ as an assistant rabbi 16 years ago. And we meet monthly in different house of worships. During COVID, we met monthly on Zoom, and it was an incredible, meaningful part of that very difficult time that we had each other to support each other. I'm one of the co-conveners. We are 3 co-conveners right now. We usually try to have 2 to 4 co-conveners and trying to have people from different denominations, Jewish, Christian, Muslims. Our group brings in together people from all the denominations, and we are very glad to have this diversity in the group. And first and foremost, I think the main goal of our association is for us to build a relationship between each other. So it is in a way, how would I call it? It's like a group, a group that we come to share, to be there for each other and really build friendships. And I would count many of the faith leaders in the Brookline area as my closest friends. And that is really a blessing to have that. And we connect and we share our joys and our challenges, both personally as well as in our congregations. By being able to be there for each other in a personal way, then we can collectively bring our voice as faith leaders. We try to do a few things every year. Some years we are more active than others, depending what's going on in our lives. I would say that our main event every year is our Thanksgiving, Interfaith Thanksgiving service that we have been hosting for many, many, many years. And that I hope that you'll join us, and I invite anyone that is watching to join us. And you can already save the date. It's always the Sunday before Thanksgiving. We do not have yet a location, but you can save the date for November 19, 2023 for our interfaith Thanksgiving service. And we come all together, all the clergy and people from our congregations. And it is an opportunity for us from our different faiths to come into prayer together, usually also doing some service work together. So that's our main event that we have been doing every year. But besides that, we try to do other things. We had our planning meeting in June for next year, and we're thinking about doing something around Pride next June, and we're thinking about planning a day of service together. We also, for many years, have been supporting and helping and hosting, taking turns to host an iftar for the Muslim community in Brookline. So things come up and we support each other. If we have an event or a class or something that we can do together, we co-sponsor together. We invite each other to teach, because when you build relationships, you can be there for each other. And we get to share different understandings of our practices. We get to learn from each other. And in terms of need, in times that there have been anything against one of our communities, the first people we get phone calls from are from our colleagues. So if there's been the day after Pittsburgh, we got phone calls from colleagues telling us about how can we support you, and if there is any anti-Islam or anti-LGBTQ plus or anything, we call each other to see how we can support each of our communities and moments of distress. So really building partnership, friendship, fellowship between us. And I feel very blessed that we have this. It's very unique, very special.
I imagine you may even talk about finances, about managing your buildings and your properties and keeping the lights on, which, I've spoken privately with some leaders of a few different congregations in Brookline, and they're struggling to figure out how are they going to maintain these beautiful, large buildings that are so expensive. So I imagine that's another thing that you help each other with.
Yeah, we do help each other. We share best practices. We share what works, what doesn't work. We share contacts, connections. You should talk to this person. You should talk to that person. So it's really a way for us to support and help each other. One thing that it's important to note is that though this is separate from GBAO, that many people might be familiar, Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, many of us are very involved in GBIO, Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, TBZ, including when we are one of the founders of GBIO. And I would say most of the communities, the house of worships in Brookline are involved. So we also get to be together in action, not only in partnership and friendship, but also right now many of us are working around housing, justice, and in these moments, like we can bring together the work that we're doing with our teams of GBIO also to our table as a core group of clergy in Brookline. So it really connects all the parts of our work, our commitment to social justice, our commitment to equity, and also our commitment to each other as friends and colleagues and spiritual leaders.
So if it's okay, I'd like to loop back and learn a little bit more about the Interfaith Thanksgiving. It sounds amazing. And that it's not on Thanksgiving Day means that some of us have a chance to go who might not otherwise be able to. Tell us a little more about it. Do you know how long it's been happening? You know, how big is it?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Sure. So I don't know how long it's happening. It's been happening for sure before I came to Brookline. So definitely for more than 16 years. So I think it's been even maybe 5-10 years before that. Probably the information is somewhere to be found. But we take turns where we host it. TBZ has hosted it twice in these years that I've been here. And as we have built a service that brings traditions, rituals, liturgy of all of our religions. So we would read things from the New Testament, things from the Torah, from the Tanakh, from the Jewish Bible, things from the Quran, and we bring songs from all our traditions. We often or always have one of us preach and give a sermon around Thanksgiving, and one of us doing an opening invocation and a closing invocation, and we bring music. And we, at that point, always ask for people to bring donations for the Brookline pantry. So it is a big push that we make as a Brookline clergy for the pantry. And that has been for many years. It used to be we will pass bring your food or bring some checks or money, cash. This past year we would pass the QR code so people can make donations online, or we send the link ahead of time. And it is wonderful to be able to support the pantry together as a Brookline Clergy Association. It is we have been always doing in the Sunday afternoon before Thanksgiving, for that very reason that we want to do it as far from Thanksgiving so people that are traveling can be there. It is always challenging. Some years we have, before COVID, our numbers were bigger, and then it got smaller. And this year it was a little big again. And we're hoping that now we are somehow in this post-pandemic era, more people will come, and hoping that this being in conversation with you will bring more people to the Thanksgiving service. So again, as soon as we have the information, we will be sharing it around. I will share it directly with you so you can share with the constituents.
Well, and we'll talk about it on the show as we get closer. An event that I have been to, because I've not been to the Thanksgiving, but I have been to several of the iftars, which have been really, really great. A nice opportunity to meet some neighbors. And it was my experience this past year that there were folks from maybe 15 or 20 different houses of worship who all came together to learn more about the tradition and to eat some great food. And so I think that's a sort of another example.
It's amazing. Yeah, it is an amazing event. I couldn't be there, sadly, this past year, but we hosted a TBZ a few years ago. And first, the food is amazing, but also the opportunity to learn, to pray together, to learn together. It was phenomenal and very, very very unique. And I think that is what we are trying to do. We model between us, for us to speak, I can speak about myself, for me to speak about the importance of interfaith relationship and to being in connection with people of other faith, I have to model that. And that's what I hope is the work that I'm doing by being in relationship, in real relationship, not in just like, you know, nice to meet you, what's your name, etc., but in real deep relationship with my colleagues, is that I can model with that what I hope many of our congregants, members of our synagogues, temples, churches, mosques can do too. So that is really what I'm hoping. I'll give you another example of something we did this year is in the realm of having each other teach. We had a rabbinical student, an intern in a TBZ, who part of his project as he was graduating, he's now just graduated, Rabbi Josh Grimberg, was how to teach Judaism to Christians. That was his thesis for his graduation. So he needed to give it a try. So I'm like, I'll just invite my friends. I'll send an email to all the churches of my colleagues here in the Brookline area and inviting them to a class. So TVZ offered a class, and we had around 8 to 10 participants from 2 or 3 different churches who came for 4 weeks to learn about Judaism from this lens of teaching, specifically teaching Judaism to Christians. I couldn't have done this or offer this class if I didn't have the deep relationship I have my colleagues, because they needed to trust me that I was offering something that would be good for their congregants. So we try to build a relationship between us that models then what we can build for the people in our community. And so hopefully this in a way has some, in some way goes into Brookline to build deeper, better, meaningful relationships from people that come from different backgrounds and practice different religions. So that's our hope.
And it's also, you know, we in Brookline, many of us do embrace diversity and want to live in a more diverse society, more diverse community. At the same time, we tend to work with people who look like us. We tend to live next to people who look like us. And look like us doesn't just mean our face. It means the kind of bank account we have, the kind of education we have, frankly, our politics, right? And so, in fact, talking with people in other congregations does provide for meaningful diversity of thought and background that many folks in Brookline and frankly across America aren't receiving as much diversity as they would be getting otherwise. And so I love this. I love this idea of folks, maybe they come from different parts of the world, or maybe they don't, but they have different traditions. Often they're related to ethnic background, not always, right? And so it's really an opportunity for people to start with one thing in common and discover the things about their families, about their expectations, about their values that are the same and that are different, and why. And it turns out that almost always that's just fine. In fact, that's interesting. That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. So no, that's very important. And what I would add to this is that when there have been and when they are, because they are moments of challenges, both in our country or in our town, in our wonderful small, not too small town in Brookline, we also come together and raise our voice. We see ourselves as the moral religious voice of Brookline. So we talk a lot about what does that mean and when we need to stand up for things. And sometimes we don't all agree 100% with everything, again, because we come from different backgrounds and different communities, but we try very much to stand up together for what we think is the moral voice of the Brookline interfaith community.
Do you have, or have you thought about having public events that center the clergy themselves, you know, like panels or conversations? And I could sort of imagine a really interesting Coolidge Corner theater experience. Put 5 or 6 of you up on the stage, get a really great moderator, not someone like me, but a professional, right?
You're a very good moderator. You're
Oh,
good.
please. I can moderate one at a time at most. But I would love to hear the conversations about where there's what I would call productive tension, right? One of the things I know about so many of the faith leaders in Brookline is you're all so remarkably easy to get along with. And I'm sure that you're so kind and generous with each other. You're really showing grace. But I'm sure that there are real differences of opinion about how to do things and the right way forward. And I'd love to hear some of that conversation one day, maybe, some of
that could be very interesting. Our biggest challenge is time. We have all these ideas, right? We always have all these ideas. One of the ideas that we said, and by saying it now on TV, maybe I'm making a commitment that will make me, is that maybe we should show up more in town meetings and have more of a face in the community. And I just said it out loud. So if you're watching this, just let me know. I'll be there and many of us will be there. But really to try to, we have all these ideas of what should be our role beyond coming together as a group, organizing these events and serving our own communities. But what is our role in the larger Brookline community? Our biggest challenge is, as you probably have a similar challenge, is time. We have great ideas and not enough time for this. So this year I'm very fresh telling you all this because we just had our end of year meeting trying to think about what our goals are for next year. Of course, next year won't start until after the high holidays because the Jewish high holidays are in September. So we don't start until October, and then Christmas come and then the year ended, right? So that's one of our challenges, because we are also very, very careful with all our holiday seasons. So calendaring between us is very difficult because we have all the religions to have in mind as we come together. One more thing I will add, and it's really probably the last thing I want to add, is around because you mentioned COVID and the pandemic. I want to say that being in relationship with the Brookline Clergy Association was one of the life savers. There's a word when you right during COVID. We met on Zoom. It was one of the first groups that I met regularly on Zoom, and we share and we cried and we yell and we scream. We talked about how difficult, how lonely, how hard it was to be a clergy during that time and support our communities. We would share, how many people we had to bury during this time, or visit them, or say the end of life prayers over the phone because we couldn't visit. And just having each other and knowing that we were not alone in this really holy work that felt at moments that we too difficult to bear alone was incredibly powerful. So it's one of those things that I carry. I have so many pictures of my screenshots of all of us of those meetings. At some point when we discover on Zoom that you could put funny faces and stuff like that, we will do that just to laugh with each other because it was such a difficult time. So really, I'm grateful you're inviting me to reflect on the Brookline Clergy Association, because it reminds me how important and how dear to me it is.
Well, I'm delighted that you were able to share a little bit about it for us here on Brookline Interactive Group. It's the kind of thing that I think most people have no idea exists, but as soon as you tell them, they say, well, of course it exists. Of course that these spiritual leaders, these religious leaders, they need to be talking with each other, right? They need to be coordinated. They need to be supporting each other, getting new ideas, reminding themselves of old ideas that worked back then, try them again. And I'm delighted that you work together, not just to support your own congregations, but really to help quietly but really effectively move our community forward. And so thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for
with us.
inviting me. Thank you so much for inviting me to
It's-
speak. And I look forward to more of this.
It's been a real pleasure having you on TV here on Brookline Interactive Group. And folks, as you know, we've just been chatting with Rabbi Claudia from TBZ, and delighted to have you on the show today. We look forward to seeing you at the Sunday before Thanksgiving for the Interfaith Thanksgiving, at the next Iftar, and frankly, around town. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.